In my last video, I talked about how people get confused by how I look. Today, I want to show you why, not just genetically, but emotionally. This is how my ancestors came to Mexico. Let me take you back to the early 1900s. My great-grandfather arrived in Mexico to work on railroad construction, as there was much American investment in transportation infrastructure at the time. But here's what makes his story interesting. He was born in a German-speaking community in Wisconsin. He didn't even learn English until he went to school. So picture this: a man who spoke German first, English second, and eventually learned Spanish out of necessity. Already, we're talking about someone living in multiple worlds. He settled in Chihuahua, but not just anywhere in Chihuahua. He moved into one of the Mormon colonies that had been established there about 15 years earlier. These colonies were founded by Mormons fleeing persecution in the United States because of their polygamous practices. They crossed the border, bought land, and built entire communities in northern Mexico. Communities that, to this day, look and feel different. In one of these colonies, my great-grandfather met my great-grandmother. They married, had a family, and we've been here ever since. Now here's what's fascinating about these communities. They are legally and functionally Mexican. Everyone who lives there pays taxes, votes in elections, follows the laws of this country. They are Mexican citizens, but they've retained many American cultural characteristics. Imagine a little town in Utah replanted in Mexican soil. People speak English at home, like I did growing up. They preserve fruit in mason jars. Houses have basements, which is almost unheard of in most of Mexico. And at the same time, these are Mexican communities. People eat chiles and tacos right alongside peach cobbler and chicken pot pie. Kids grow up speaking both languages. Families celebrate both American and Mexican holidays. So when someone looks at me and can't figure out if I'm American or Mexican, I understand the confusion. Because in a way, I'm both. And in a way, I'm neither. My family has been in Mexico for over a century. 4 generations. I was born here, my parents were born here, my passport is Mexican, and my life is Mexican. But I also speak English natively, because that's what we spoke at home. I have relatives in the United States. I grew up with cultural touchstones that feel American. And this is the point I want to make. Identity isn't always simple. Heritage isn't always obvious. And when we make assumptions based on how someone looks or sounds, we are missing the whole story. The Mormon colonies in Chihuahua are a perfect example of how cultures can blend, adapt, and coexist. These communities aren't confused about their identity. They've created something unique. They're Mexican communities with American roots. And that's just not a contradiction. That's just reality. And here's why this matters beyond just my story. Mexico is full of stories like this. There are communities of Germans, Japanese, Lebanese, Chinese, Koreans, French, Poles, Italians, Croatians, and Jewish populations throughout the country. There are Spaniards who came over after their Civil War, African descendants, indigenous peoples with dozens of distinct cultures and languages. Mexico isn't a monolith. There's no single Mexican look or Mexican culture. It's a country built on layers of migration, mixing, and adaptation, just like the United States. So when Americans assume all Mexicans look a certain way, or when Mexicans in my own hometown ask if I'm from here, they're both operating on the same flawed assumption that you can tell someone's nationality, their belonging, their identity just by looking at them. Well, you can't. So that's the story of how my ancestors came to Mexico and why I look the way I do, and why identity is more complicated than most people think. If you found this interesting, let me know in the comments. What assumptions have people made about you based on how you look? Have you ever felt caught between two cultures? And if you want to learn more about navigating cultural differences with understanding instead of judgment, subscribe to this channel. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.